Welcome to the Fancy Thinker. I'm Jared Quartermatch, and today is episode number 16 for Reading the Prose, and I'm going to be reading a passage from Simon Jimenez's The Spear Cuts Through Water, a book I am a little over halfway finished right now. And the passage I'm going to read is right in the beginning. It's only on page 10, so there's not going to be, many spoilers here at all. None at all, really. It's still, just starting out. So nothing's gonna be ruined for you here. Um, and a little bit about this passage. Most of it is in second person, a unique storytelling vehicle that Jimenez uses to great effect in this book. And so that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about here. So let's get into it. This spear, you know it well. The blood-red tint of the wood, the red tassel that chokes the gleaming and deadly point, the strange grooves and etchings that travel the length of the weapon in esoteric patterns. Ever since you can remember, this weapon has dutifully hung on the family room mantel, ignored by all in your house as but part of the scenery, for it was too expensive, too ancient, and too useless to interact with. You and your brothers once caught holy hell for playing with it in the courtyard when you were very young. One of the housekeepers informed your father, and your father, who never hit you but knew other ways to make you feel small, spoke to you and your brothers one by one in his office, and never again did you touch the weapon, much less look at it, which is why you feel an illicit thrill to hold it now, whether it be the real thing or merely a dream of it. It has traveled far to get here, Yo Lolo liked to say, with farther yet to go. You notice the other members of the audience, the other shades, stealing furtive glances at your weapon. We were wondering why the shadow was armed, and they are wondering why the weapon looks so familiar. Why have you brought it with you to this sacred place, and if you intended to use it? But such questions would have to wait. Uh, so, very interesting passage there, right? So, this use of second person, with the use of second person, you, Jimenez saying you're a part of this story. You are being dragged into this story. And it's something that you personally are going to have to be okay with if you want to enjoy this book. Um, and so you take on a caricature of the person in this story. It's gonna be it's a slight case of cognitive dissonance because you may not have grown up with a spear in your mantle, so you automatically have to assume that role of somebody who had grew up with a spear on their mantle. Um, and so you're right away you're separating yourself from actual reality, and you're being thrust into this role. You're voluntarily going into this role. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't carry on with the story, with this book, if you didn't, if you weren't drawn in by this style to start with. Um, and so it's saying, because it's giving you this instruction that you remember this weapon being hung on the family room mantle, and so um, it assumes that you have this historical knowledge, and you and your brothers once caught hell for playing with it, which automatically means that you had to accept the fact that you, as this character, had brothers. Not everybody has brothers, and some only have one, like me. But for the sake of the story, you you are taking that reality, your own reality, pushing it aside and taking on this new reality that you have brothers and that you are a character who is, in this story who got in trouble from their father, from your father, and you never thought about the spear again until right now. So right now, you're thinking of the spear because you have it. And that's a very interesting thing because it gives the reader this sense of agency, a sense of involvement with the story to have this spear and being told um, by this story by your Lola, your I think means Nana or grandmother, um, and that the spear has traveled far to get in your hands and with further yet to go. So there's some hints of things happening and things coming that and I don't know what the answer to these hints are because I'm only halfway through the book. So there's hints that things are things in the future. um, Another aspect of this passage is you notice other members of the audience because you're at this inverted theater that gets brought up in the very beginning. And um, but one of the key words here was, you know, the other shades stealing furtive glances at your weapons. What does that mean exactly, the other shades? Why are you being referred to as a shade? And what exactly does that mean? Um, we don't know that. That's one of the questions that's going to have to wait. As well as why you have the spear in this sacred place and why and if you intend to use it. And that's very amusing because it's intimates that you don't know your own intentions at this point in time. And so that's yet another sense of cognitive dissonance between the story and the reader being part of the story, yet the reader not knowing what his own or her own intentions are. So think about that for a moment and try to wrap your mind around it. But Jimenez does this so subtly that you're automatically wrapping your head around this as you're reading on and enjoying the story. That if you stop to think about it, that's fine. You can stop and think about it and go, "Wow, I what am I going to do with this spear?" But I don't know. So it's a very interesting conundrum there. And as the last line says, such questions would have to wait. Interestingly enough, he does flip into um, first person with the italicized line, which is the first person of the rest of the audience. We were wondering why the shadow was armed. So the rest of the audience is not armed, and you are, but you see the thoughts of the rest of the audience here. And Jimenez does this quite frequently throughout the story. He switches you know the the tenses like that, and so he goes from either second person to first person or third person to first person like that, with a different point of view from the first person's perspective, and he does it with a lot of different characters and stuff like that. But in this case, it's directly related to the second person because it's the first person shades audience referring to you personally as why you have this spear. And so there's a lot to unpack there as you take on this role as the reader. You're taking on this role of this character in the story that is the story talking about you, the person. And so you can see how you can do some mental gymnastics around that concept. And I think it was just very well done by the author, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So that has been this episode of Reading the Prose. Please let me know below If you had the same kind of thoughts about that style right off the bat in this book, if you've read it or if you plan to read it. So let me know. Let me know more thoughts about that, and what you may think about that passage. And so, with that said, please like and subscribe, and please be good to each other. Thank you.